Richard Ojeda ran a spirited race um, in his district. I like him. I like him a lot. And I covered that race because I wanted him to win that race. He was trying to unseat a Republican in that district, but he was running as a flaming lefty, essentially a labor Democrat, as he calls himself. Well, now he's running for president. After losing his particular race, he's now running for president. And in running for president, he's retained that fire. The aspect of him that I liked was that he was angry. Angry seems rational and appropriate a response. You look at your societies, you see a top 1% that is doing magnificently well beyond all measure of expectations. While at the same token, the wages of the people who are in the society, who do all of the work, who do all the labor, stagnant, not having budge. One side is done magnificently well, the other side stagnant. 95% of the wealth created in Obama's era went to the top 1%. That is an amazing, staggering number. It hurts to even say the number, and yet it's true. The person who does the coffee, who does the sweeping, who writes the computer programs, the people who do the actual labor in this society, 1% of the population taking home 95% of the spoils. And that was from a guy who they called a socialist. Oh, he's a socialist, he's a communist, he's a Muslim sympathizer, he's all of these things. He is a person who was working tirelessly for his donors, the top 1%, an issue of class. If you're in West Virginia and you see a quarter of the kids in your district are in poverty, what is the right response? I mean, that's fundamental failure of your particular society at that point, when you can't necessarily increase the wealth of the rest of the society. At least in my mind, the goal should be the advancement of society, not the advancement of a 1%. You're put in office to supposedly represent your constituents. The problem here is the constituents that they represent are the top 1%. And be a Democrat or Republican, they have worked obsequiously to make sure that wealth stayed in the hands of that top 1% as they're doing things that are best for the population itself. Ojeda gets that anger. He gets pissed off about it. And that makes me like him. Because again, I consider anger a rational response in a society or a system that gives so much to so few people. Take a look at this. I want to point issue with some of this that he's saying, because some of it belies how people behave in this capitalistic system. But let's take a listen to Ojeda. Let's see.
Workers. Now, General Motors was one of those guys that everybody, it's 5:45 in the morning here. I'm actually in Washington, D.C., and yesterday got word that General Motors is basically going to be laying off around 14,000 workers. Now, General Motors was one of those guys that we bailed out, and then obviously this year they got a huge tax break, and here we are now, almost it's almost Christmas, and they just announced that they're going to be shutting down locations in Ohio and in Michigan. So I'm going to actually get on a plane and I'm going to fly up there and I'm going to start talking to some of these people. It's a shame that we have bailed out organizations like this, and when they need help, they just come running. And obviously, this country, does everything. We do everything we can to make sure that these people don't fail, or these organizations don't fail. But they don't have no problem at all pulling the plug on their workers. I'll tell you, guys. We need a movement, a labor movement.
First, I agree with him on the need of a labor movement. That is true. Essentially a workers' rights or a human rights movement. Agreed. The problem to that is all the incentives in this particular capitalistic system go for those companies doing exactly what they did. They're corporations. Their job is to maximize their profit. Well, you can't maximize your profit if you're paying people a decent wage. And if given an opportunity to ship a job overseas because a worker can make something cheaper overseas, or replacing that worker with a robot because that robot doesn't get blue, that robot doesn't have girlfriend or boyfriend issues, that robot doesn't have get back pain, that robot does a job and it does it 24 hours a day without bitching or complaining about it, and it does it for zero, whatever the initial cost of putting it in there, but after that it does its thing. A human being is different. We get blue, we hurt our knees. It's just called being a person. The point that I'm making here is it makes all the sense in the world. Every last incentive that is built into this process tells that corporation to do exactly what that corporation is doing. Firing that worker, cutting their wages or keeping their wages stagnant, or just shipping the job overseas, or getting it done by a robot. It is the natural incentive in the system itself. Now, are you saying that system needs to be changed? Are you saying that something needs to be tweaked in the capitalistic system where it doesn't necessarily do that? And if so, you're speaking my language. If that's what you call being a labor Democrat, being willing to tackle the system itself that's creating the outcomes, then yes, we're on the same page. If it's FDR stuff of saving capitalists, saving the capitalists that's in this process, then I don't know how you're going to get a different outcome. You get this outcome because the incentives drive for this particular outcome. If you want to change the system, then we're on the same page. I want to change the system where these outcomes are not incentivized. Let's let them finish.
Across this country, this right here is showing what the working class citizens go through and how they're treated. We saw it in the teacher strike, and in West Virginia, and that also spread throughout America. And now here we see it in the auto workers. Once again, remember, we bailed out General Motors when they needed help, but they don't have no problem at all moving things overseas, and they don't have no problem at all cutting their workforce to prepare for, new technology, which is basically replacing, jobs.
Of course, they don't have an issue doing that. They're robots designed to maximize profit. And if you give them a tax break, they're going to say, thank you for that tax break. But all the incentives in the world go for them to behave in the way that they behave. And yes, they will replace a human being with a robot. You should want them to, though. I am not one of these lefties that believe that the elevator was better suited with a person pulling the lever up and down in order to go up and down. No, that elevator was better being automated. I don't think you should have a human being with all the skills and abilities that a human being can possess pulling a lever up and down. I don't think you should have human beings dropping french fries or flipping hamburgers. I think human beings are more interesting than doing those particular type of repetitive jobs. If you can get a robot to do that job, you should want a robot to do that job. The problem is not whether the technology is taking over certain jobs. The problem is the way your society is tweaked in regards to forcing people to need jobs, even when people don't necessarily need jobs. It's looked at as a cultural issue when a person is born into this particular society that they work. And you can understand why. Over the course of time, we've needed and required people to work in order to make the bare necessities available to us. But we've gotten beyond that point. I mean, our technology itself has enough to make sure that everyone is clothed, fed, and lives a decent lifestyle. Not everybody has to actually do a particular job. And if it's to a person flipping hamburgers, I would rather the person not flip hamburgers. I mean, for that matter, I want the Uber cars to be automated so they can zoom in and zoom out when a person needs to get into go point A to point B. The problem here is the way that we look at this. The way we look at this is a problem. Technology is the thing that frees us from labor. It is what it is. I mean, you've set up a capitalistic structure where things are gone through faster, meaning materials. All this time it takes to mine minerals and everything else. We put them in our computers, we put them in our software. But we make the software go bad within a few years because if the software lasted for too long, the company would go out of business. Business and the maximization of profit has taken over all measures of good sense. That's the problem. It's not people being switched out by workers, and I'm not mad. I like N Ojeda. I'm just trying to make this point that it's always pointed to as we need to keep these jobs. That's like saying the elevator man should still be there today so you can keep that job. I don't want that guy having an elevator job. I'm sorry. I want that to be automated. If a human being can be replaced by something that's doing a better job, I want it to be replaced by something that's doing a better job. I want the society to be able to deal with that. That not everybody is going to necessarily have a job, but we will take care of everybody in the society because we have enough technological skill to make sure that everyone is clothed and fed and have power. I like Ojeda. I like this, but the language always fails at a certain point because the language always hits upon everybody must work. And it's like, well, yeah, I agree that people should work, but what those people do and consider to be work may not necessarily be the fixed job space that we have currently. Especially since, again, we have enough technological skill to make sure everyone has the things that they need. But I like what Ojeda is saying here. He's angry and ready to kick some ass, which makes me like him a lot. Chess credibility. Now that I've had a taste of it, I find it hard to take Jamarl seriously when he's not playing chess while talking. Yeah, that's hard to do. That's extremely hard to do. Like, I didn't realize how hard that was. It's like you're talking while playing. It's one thing if I'm just randomly talking shit that's off the top of my head. That's not me really thinking about anything I'm saying. But to have a concise talk to the camera while simultaneously playing is not the easiest thing in the world. Chess credibility, that's funny. Alright, I'll end this here. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. And you can always support the content through Patreon. But that said, a labor movement is not a bad idea. I would say a human rights movement, but a labor movement is not bad. Thanks, guys.